Good afternoon. Joining me here today are two members of our cabinet, Secretary of Commerce Kelly Schultz and Secretary of Housing and Community Development Ken Holt. We're here today to announce the doubling of our economic recovery and relief efforts for Maryland small businesses. But first, I want to provide an update on Maryland's continued health and economic recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of our early and aggressive mitigation efforts and the vigilance of the people of Maryland, our key health metrics continue to remain low and stable. While the fall coronavirus surge appears to be spiking all across the nation, Maryland remains one of only 8 states in America where new cases of COVID-19 are low and continuing to stay low. Our statewide positivity rate is one of the lowest in America, currently at 3.1%, a decline of nearly 89% since it peaked at 26.91% 188 days ago on April 17th. We are closely monitoring a slight uptick in hospitalizations, both acute and ICU beds, over the past 2 weeks. However, hospitalizations are still down 73% since they peaked 175 days ago at 1,711, and we've seen a nearly 80% decline in ICU levels since they peaked 165 days ago on May 10th. Our first goal every day is to save the lives of Marylanders. And according to the CDC, Maryland currently has one of the lowest death rates in the country, with 0.7 new deaths per 100,000 people. And we are pleased that twice this month, for the first time since the pandemic began, we have had days with 0 new deaths statewide. While Maryland is continuing to make steady progress in limiting the spread of the virus, the spiking numbers in other states, both in our region and across the nation, are concerning. And they are an important reminder that this crisis is far from over. The fact is that COVID-19 is spreading rapidly throughout the country, and this virus certainly does not recognize state borders. So while we're currently doing better than 42 other states on our health metrics, we are also continuing to make every effort to keep Maryland safely open for business. The way we do that is by continuing with our cautious, data-driven approach, and by everyone continuing to follow the public health guidance. I want to sincerely thank Marylanders for their vigilance throughout this pandemic in wearing masks, physical distancing, and by taking the other simple steps, which are the reason that we are doing so well in comparison to others. Our contact tracing operation continues to show that social gatherings remain the most likely source of transmissions. The number one activity of those who have tested positive continues to be family gatherings, followed by house parties. And with the holidays fast approaching, and with the virus spiking in 42 states, this data is an important reminder that the way to keep each other safe and to keep Maryland open for business is pretty simple. Avoid traveling to hotspots and continue following the public health guidelines by wearing masks or face coverings and practicing physical distancing. A new Goucher College poll shows that 89% of all Marylanders agree that taking these simple actions is helping us to stop the spread of the virus. So masks and distancing remain our most effective mitigation strategies. We also want to recommend that Marylanders continue as much as possible to avoid large crowds, gatherings, and congregate settings. And as I mentioned, for months, our data continues to show that smaller gatherings and parties are the #1 source of new cases. So we can't let our guard down, and we should remain vigilant even when we are in close contact with the people that we know and love. Outdoor activity continues to be much safer than indoor activity, and frequent hand washing remains a critically important tool. Following these simple guidelines will keep us firmly on the road to recovery and help us slow the spread, prevent the surge, and keep Maryland open for business. In addition to doing better on our health metrics than most of the nation, we are also experiencing a better economic recovery than the nation and most other states. Maryland was able to keep more than 70% of our entire economy open throughout the entire crisis. We safely opened 98% of our economy back in mid-June, and nearly 2 months ago we entered stage 3 of our recovery plan when all businesses were able to safely reopen in our state. We have now added and regained nearly 200,000 jobs since our recovery began. Last month, our private sector grew at the 7th fastest rate in America. Our healthcare sector grew at the 6th fastest rate among all 50 states, and our manufacturing sector grew at the 3rd fastest rate in the nation. There are, however, increasing indications that the national economic recovery is stalling. The failure of Washington to provide additional stimulus relief for our small businesses, struggling families, and to the states for economic recovery is having a devastating impact. And we need both parties in Washington to stop playing politics, to end the gridlock, and to get this done for the American people. Our small business community and our struggling Marylanders who depend on them for their jobs cannot afford to wait any longer. This is especially true for our restaurants, entertainment venues, and our small mom and pop shops along our main streets across the state, many of whom are struggling and are desperately in need of additional and immediate relief. More than 81,000 Maryland businesses have already received $10 billion in PPP funding, and we have already put out $7.6 billion in unemployment assistance to more than 622,000 Marylanders. In addition, we have also already provided $250 million in emergency economic relief, including more than 10,000 grants and loans to small businesses and nonprofits. Earlier this week, we announced $13 million in additional relief for Maryland farmers, growers, producers, and watermen. We have already provided $10 million in funding to help small businesses retain their employees, and have provided $3 million more in assistance for our arts and nonprofits organizations. All of this has made a big difference, but it's still not enough. So today, we are doubling this $250 million in relief by investing $250 million from the state's Rainy Day Fund for a total relief package of $500 million through the Maryland Strong Economic Recovery Initiative. This new $250 million investment will fund a combination of new relief programs as well as the expansion of our existing successful relief programs in order to quickly provide additional relief to the small businesses and their employees who need our help the most. This economic recovery investment will include an additional $50 million for the Maryland Small Business COVID-19 Relief Grant Fund, which provides direct, immediate grants to businesses and nonprofits that have lost revenue because of the COVID-19 pandemic. This $50 million represents the third installment of this successful program, which we launched in March and expanded in June to bring our total investment to $145 million. It will allow us to fully fund the entire backlog of all the business grant applications which have been already received and reviewed by the Maryland Department of Commerce. The Maryland Strong Economic Recovery Initiative will also provide $50 million in new relief specifically for Maryland restaurants. This will go to things like purchasing equipment and services to expand outdoor dining for the fall and winter, through improvements such as tenting and heaters, as well as funding for infrastructure and health improvements, including HVAC filtration systems and sanitation services. It will also fund things like technology upgrades to support the expansion of more carryout and delivery, as well as the purchase of PPE for restaurant staff, and it will even assist struggling businesses with paying their rent. We are providing this funding to local jurisdictions who will be able to distribute these available funds to qualifying restaurants as quickly as possible. All of this money must be dispersed immediately and no later than December 31st of this year. We are also providing $20 million in additional dollars for grants through the Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development to assist other hard-hit businesses and local entertainment venues in our 33 Maryland Main Street organizations, as well as the 8 Baltimore City Main Street organizations, representing nearly 4,000 businesses across the state. We will invest another $20 million, which will triple the investment in the COVID-19 Layoff Aversion Fund to assist additional small businesses in retaining their employees. This successful program, administered by the Maryland Department of Labor, has already helped small businesses with an average of 20 employees to stay open and has saved nearly 9,000 Maryland jobs. We are also doubling our previous commitment with an additional $5 million into MSBDFA, the Maryland Small Business Development Financing Authority, to provide even more small and minority business low-interest loans. Our Economic Recovery Initiative will also include $2 million in additional funding to support hometown tourism efforts that promote our restaurants, local attractions, and shops, and an additional $3 million in funding will also go to assist nonprofits, county arts organizations, and local artists and performing artists. Finally, we are establishing a dedicated emergency rapid response fund of $100 million, which will be available to immediately deploy to the other areas of economic need as we move forward, as we assess our state economic situation on an ongoing basis, and as we wait for the federal government to reach a consensus on the next federal stimulus package. I have directed our teams in each agency to ensure that this much-needed funding gets out the door to our struggling citizens and small businesses as quickly as possible. We also intend to work closely with our local partners so that they can assist in expeditiously getting this money into the hands of those who need it most. This new $250 million Maryland Strong Economic Recovery Initiative will be critical to the thousands of struggling restaurants, small businesses, and main streets across the state who are attempting to weather this crisis. Equally important to their survival will be all 24 jurisdictions finally moving into Stage 3 of the Maryland Strong Roadmap to Recovery Plan. For months, Our restaurants, small retail shops, and other businesses have had safe and phased reopening plans, and our health metrics are well below required reopening levels, and yet we have a few local leaders who are still refusing to allow them to open and to operate under the state's reopening guidelines. Solving and slowing the spread of this virus and saving lives continues to be our most important priority. And with our health metrics continuing to remain low and stable, local jurisdictions should be focused on our economic health and well-being as well. We're disappointed that many counties have not yet allocated the bulk of the assistance funding which has already been provided to them in order to help citizens and small businesses in their communities. The state paid out more than $362 million in CARES Act funding to 19 of our smaller counties, and to date only 1/3 of that funding has been spent or dispersed by the counties. The 5 largest counties received another $691 million directly from the federal government in CARES Act funding. This money is required to be spent by the end of the calendar year. And so we're calling on all of the local jurisdictions to consider matching these new state investments by utilizing some of their remaining CARES Act funding and to help us quickly push it out into our economy. From the beginning of this crisis back in March, I have been fully committed to keeping Marylanders informed, to being transparent, and to providing the facts as directly as I can. We've also continued to take bold actions and to make sound decisions based on the rapidly changing facts on the ground. That is exactly what we will continue to do in the days, weeks, and months ahead. But it is the everyday actions of all Marylanders that will ultimately determine if our health and economic recovery can continue. I know that there is COVID fatigue and tremendous frustration that this pandemic is continuing to disrupt our daily lives. And I know that many people are experiencing a great deal of hardship and stress. And this has been a very long and difficult year for all of us. But the only way that we can continue to make progress is by all of us doing our part and looking out for one another. We need to recommit to the simple actions that can keep our families and our neighbors safe. Because only the people of Maryland have the power to slow the spread, prevent the surge, and to keep Maryland open for business. As I have traveled all across Maryland over these last several weeks, I have been inspired by the incredible strength and resilience of Marylanders, the restaurant and small business owners who found ways to adapt and get back to serving their customers, the hardworking farmers and watermen who have kept our food supply chain functioning smoothly, essential workers in our grocery stores and pharmacies are all working, as those that are working in supply warehouses and transportation who have worked day in and day out since those darkest days back in the spring, as well as the scientists who are working to develop vaccines and new therapeutic treatments right here in our state. And most importantly, our doctors, nurses, healthcare workers, and first responders who continue to give all that they have on the front lines. Each and every one of you truly are showing what it means to be Maryland strong. With that, I'll be happy to take a few questions.
Governor, you've had resistant calls to increase funding to $500 million. Can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at this number and the use of the rainy day fund, and do you anticipate replenishing that if another round of stimulus comes from the federal government?
Well, we didn't think it was prudent to drain the rainy day fund or to spend $500 million from the rainy day fund, but the recommended traditional percentage that we keep in the rainy day fund is 5%, which is just under $1 billion. And this is the money that's in excess and over that amount. So we're still keeping the traditional and recommended amount, which is nearly $1 billion, 900 something, in the rainy day fund. And this was the excess money that was above and beyond that. And we thought that was the right amount of money that we could put into all these programs and realistically get out to people to help. And so we were comfortable with that, and it was a decision by our entire administration, our budget secretary, and we spent a lot of time working on it, and we believe it's the prudent thing to do to invest in our economy so that we don't have further business loss and further unemployment, and so we can start to get more revenues coming into the state by keeping our economy strong.
Do you think it's enough money?
I'm hoping that it is, but it is sort of, and even though it's a tremendous amount of money, we can't do it alone. We still need that next stimulus package at the federal level. Obviously, it appears as if we're not going to get that before the election. I'm hopeful that regardless of what happens in the election, that the next, before the next swearing in, right after the election, that Congress will maybe be able to work out their differences in both houses, and both parties, and that maybe we can reach some kind of an agreement, because we really need the funding from the federal government.
You mentioned about the county that still haven't moved fast enough. Have you or someone from the administration sent a letter to the county executive officer encouraging them to move a little faster?
Well, so the state law gives each of the local jurisdictions the power to be more restrictive than the state. They can't be less restrictive. They have to follow the executive orders and the laws of the state, but they can take additional actions on their own. And people think we granted them that authority, but they actually have that authority, constitutionally. We have been encouraging them since June to follow our roadmap to recovery, which we think makes the most sense. The vast majority of counties are. I think 90% of them. There's 4 or 5 that are not. I mean, they had particular situations on the ground, I think, that caused them to go a little slower, which I thought was prudent. But I mean, right now, Prince George's County is down to 3.9. It's like a record low. Anne Arundel County 3.2, Baltimore City 2.8, and Montgomery County 2.6. So I mean, you can't get much lower than that. And we still have businesses that aren't open, 25% capacity in restaurants, closing things at 10 o'clock that are open later and everywhere else in the state. And so, we don't want to take away their authority, but we continue to encourage them because it's hurting our business community, and we believe that we're doing a good job of staying on top of the metrics on the health side. So, and we talk to them every single week. They have ongoing weekly calls with our entire administration. Every single one of our cabinet secretaries is dealing with them and their local health officers and superintendent of state schools, talking to the local school superintendents. We're trying to get the schools open. We're trying to get the businesses open. But it is their authority by right.
Governor, in terms of the locals and the CARES Act funding, you were criticizing some of them for not spending the money fast enough. Which local jurisdictions in particular are you concerned about?
There's 19 jurisdictions that we actually provide. It's a pass-through, but they have to report back to us. So that they've all, as a whole, those 19 counties still have nearly 2/3 of their money remaining. It has to be spent by year end. And so we're going to work with all of them to try to see if we can't get some of that either into these programs and or other things, but we've got to get it out on the street where it's going to do some help, not sitting in their bank accounts. And the other 5 counties the largest counties, this is the way the federal government program was set up, they get their funding directly without passing through the state. And they have nearly twice as much as the other 19 counties. And so we don't get reports from them about what they've spent it on, but we're just encouraging them to spend as much as they can, as quickly as they can, because it makes more of an impact.
Governor, can you talk a little bit more about the rapid response fund, $100 million?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that you're kind of setting aside to use if there's not federal funding, or if there's specific things to use it? If you could walk us through some examples of how that money might be used and what it might be used for.
Sure. Well, we wanted to have some flexibility, and we wanted to have it immediately readily available because none of us has a crystal ball. We don't know where. I mean, this thing has changed almost every day for the past 7 months, and we'll find out something next week or next month that we weren't aware of was a problem or how we might be able to help. One of these funds might be oversubscribed and working really well, but we run out of money. It might be something new that we need to invest the money. So our team really sat down and went through, how much should we put where that will be most effective to helping people get jobs, return to their jobs, keep small businesses from failing. The $100 million is really kind of a safety valve for the next thing that we might need. If we get federal funding in the next month or two, we may not need it. If we don't, we may have some serious problems that we have to invest in.
Governor, a couple of questions, if I may. The first one is on the same thing. We keep hearing numbers about how many businesses are in jeopardy, how many are in danger. I talked to one today who says it's better today, but they're frightened about the winter.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of just how dire the situation is across Maryland if this money does not go out at this point, this far into this pandemic? How bad is it for the small business?
Well, some of them are really struggling, and it's a desperate situation. And many businesses, especially some of the ones that we talked about trying to address, are hanging on by a thread, and they may not make it another month or two. And so when that happens, it's that owner of the business and all those people that they employ that really, and we're all concerned about all of them. And so I think this can make a real difference. It's not going to solve all of their problems, but it can help them stay alive until we get the vaccines or until we get the federal funding, until our economy really starts to take off. I'll again say that, on our economy is doing better than the country and almost all the states in America, but it's still really bad. It's not a great situation for a lot of these hardworking, struggling folks.
And another one, please, real quick, and I'll just move along. We continue to get calls with regard to unemployment insurance. And one of my colleagues is in the story today,
Yeah.
talked to a woman down St. Mary's County, who said she's been waiting since July for a simple fact-finding call. Let me ask, what do you say to someone like that? Are there enough call takers yet? Is the beacon system up to what you'd like it to be? I know that's three questions. So
Yeah. Yeah, you had one, now you got three more. I'm going to say hopefully we'll have some room for time. Sharice, we got to go into overtime so the rest of the folks can get a question in maybe. This continues to be a concern, and you're going to continue to have issues with people who are not going to get their payments or they're going to have struggling to get their payments. Let me just run through some of the facts with you. First of all, we have had 788,000 completed claims. That's more than we usually do in several years, but it's been over a period of a couple of months. 93.7% of those have been fully processed, and people have received an answer. Now, it's not always the answer that they want. 622,091 people have gotten their payments. 116,000 have been denied because they do not meet the federal requirements, and we can't by law pay them. So those 116,000 people are really frustrated, but we are not able to pay them money because they don't qualify. There's a pending or remaining in process 6.3%. It's 49,000. It's a lot of people. It's a tiny percentage. I think it's the best in the country. Our backlog's at 49,000. I think Virginia's 150,000. California's 1.4 million. We were the first state in America to have a website that can handle all of the things. Our upgraded website is now the best in the country. We've expanded call centers. We've hired hundreds of extra people. We've added phone lines, but you can't have 500,000, 600,000, 700,000 people call on the phone every week and handle them. It would be like calling Google and saying, can you give me this information? We have a great website, and we're trying to help people to navigate through that. But of the 49,000 that haven't been resolved, it's not because people don't care or they don't want to try to help them, but 47,000 of them that are currently under investigation. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It means their employer said they're not involuntarily terminated, or I'm not signing the paperwork, and actually we're trying to get them to come back to work, but they haven't come back to work, or I didn't fire them, they just didn't show up. They can't qualify. So we're trying to resolve those issues. It takes a lot of time, and talking to 49,000 people for sometimes hours a day is hard. So people say, why haven't I gotten my appointment? It takes a while to get 49,000 appointments, even if you have a couple thousand people working on it. 2,205 have some other issue that's 0.3%. Of the ones that we flagged as fraudulent, because we had this problem with out of state, we had nearly 100,000. We have 149,518 fraudulent claims. So that slows down the system, trying to respond to those 140,000 cases of fraud, the identity theft. It was $500 million. I think New Jersey ended up losing like $1.2 billion or something. I mean, the other states aren't even resolving the issue. Many states don't even have a website. Some of them have turned off their phones. So I guess my heart goes out to every single person whose case hasn't been resolved. And I can tell you, we're moving heaven and earth to try to get them resolved. But you will continue to hear for the next year, 100,000 people that aren't going to be satisfied with the result or that don't feel like they're getting handled fast enough. And I believe in almost every category, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, we're doing better than almost all the states. But we're still working on that. 83% of the ones that we flagged as potentially fraudulent, which take a long time to investigate, 83% of those were confirmed as fraud. And, 7,255 of those that were mostly out of state are currently under review. And it takes, federal Department of Labor, lawyers, back and forth with the employers. Many of these are very complex because they have employment from 5 or 6 different states where they're all filing simultaneously. Many of these are brand new programs that we include. A big chunk of this is self-employed people that were never eligible before for unemployment, don't know how to work unemployment. So I'm as frustrated as the folks that you've talked to. We have meetings on it every single day. We've made tremendous progress. It's $7.6 billion is in the hands of, 700,000 people, but there's still a whole lot of people we're still trying to help. I'm sorry. Yeah, Kate, I skipped over a couple times because Brad is more vocal.
Governor, you said that this money isn't enough.
Yeah.
To help everybody. So how can you guarantee that this money going out to these businesses now really will be going to the businesses that need it most? And is this the best approach to spending the money that you've been concerned about from the rainy day fund in the first place?
Well, we've taken on the rainy day fund the amount that we thought was legitimate and useful and not dropping below that 5% that we are normally keep in reserve. So it was excess. We're hoping that these are the right things and that it will be enough, but we really don't know as we go through what's going to happen over the coming weeks and months, or when Washington is going to act, when the virus is going to potentially spike out of control and things people aren't going to go out to these businesses and restaurants. We don't have all the answers, but we believe with all the best input and data and all the best advice from our team that this is going to help a lot. It's not going to help every single person or every single business, but it's going to help a whole lot of them stay in business and a whole lot of them keep their employees working. And that's really what we're just trying to do. Frankly, we're all trying to figure this out as we go, and we're just hoping we're making the right decisions. Okay.
I'm asking on behalf of the small business, if a Maryland small business already got, for example, layoff aversion grant, can they apply for more, and is this around too? And then in terms of the election, especially given the FBI announcement this week, are you concerned about the security of this election, and what would it take for you to activate the National Guard to help protect polling sites or perhaps cybersecurity?
Yeah. So on the first part, you can get businesses can get help from multiple different places. So they could, I think, through labor, get funding for the employee, the layoff aversion fund so that they're not getting rid of employees. They could also go through any one of or both of these programs, depending on their need and what they're qualified for. With respect to the security of the election, we've been watching it very carefully, both nationally and here in the state of Maryland. We've had multiple meetings with all of the federal and state security experts. We had a meeting just last week with every representative from the FBI, from Homeland Security, from the postal inspectors, along with all of our security team, our Homeland Security Director, our Superintendent of State Police, our cyber crimes, the head of our cyber crimes division, the general tag from the National Guard. All of us have been meeting, and they're all cooperating, local and the state and federal together on election security. We went through all kinds of potential scenarios and some concerns about things that could happen and laid out plans for all the things we could do to try to prevent it from happening. And they're on an ongoing basis meeting. They're having meetings with the State Board of Election, with local boards, with local law enforcement. There's a huge team of people through the Maryland Emergency Management Team and that are working on trying to ensure that every vote is counted and that nobody's tampering with the election. And I'm, reasonably confident that, really smart people are all over the problem, but I can't guarantee that people aren't going to try to do some bad things.
Governor, you mentioned earlier that about 19 counties have unspent CARES Act money. You don't know what the other larger counties that got direct funding have or don't have. You're about to send $50 million out into the states and the local jurisdictions. How is your administration going to ensure that they get it out immediately, if not by December 31st, which is your deadline?
Well, if they don't, we take it back. So that's what the agreement will be. So they won't be able to sit on the money. They either have to get it out or they lose it. And that we're going to set up programs to ensure that. I don't know that it's 19 counties that haven't done it. It's just an average of the 19 counties. So I just want to be clear.
If you take it back, how does that help? How does that help the people you're intending?
Well, then we'll try to get it out through some of our other programs or do it directly. But we're trying to, trying to process all those things and knowing who's the business most in need on this main street in this small county, they have a better idea and can get it out quicker. But if they're not doing that, we're certainly going to work with them, with every agency to try to, make sure we together can do it. All right. Thank you all very, very much.